Hello, Heartlanders. Um, Hopefully, everything is going well. It's my first ever live stream, first ever doing this. Um, let's see. Looks like I'm still the only viewer on here. Kayla will be joining soon. So, Morticia and I just finished watching Pea Ridge 3. Really liked it. There were a few places where Paul reading my words really gave me goosebumps. So, ah,
Whoa.
Hi Kayla, how's it going?
You know, this is nerve-wracking, but I'm here.
Yeah, it is. Really good to see you. Hope sounds like you and your mom enjoyed
Yes.
it.
This is the first time I've sat and witnessed my mother taking it in as it happens, and it was priceless. Um,
Yep.
to be quite honest, I should have been doing that a long time ago.
Uh, so, well, as I told you earlier, just um, tell Heartlanders a little about yourself because they hear my nice little bio every time I publish a story. But um, it'll be interesting to get the editor's viewpoint.
Oh, sure. Where I know that for multiple things I've applied to, I've had to write concise bios, but that doesn't mean I can think of one right now. But, well, we have in common that we both attended Emerson College in some capacity. And that is where I earned my bachelor's and my master's in publishing and writing. I've always liked to edit. I was the kid who, in second grade, I got paid in quarters to proofread my friend's homework. So, it's been a long time coming. And I love working on these stories. I think it's super cool to hear something I've edited adapted for audio because that's brand new. And obviously, I was thinking today, I feel like, has it almost been 2 years that we've been working together?
It has been.
Yeah, time is an interesting construct. The pandemic did a number on all of us, I'm sure, with our idea of time. But yeah, it's been a while, and I don't know, you keep pumping out cool stuff. So I get real excited to work on things with you.
Well, I appreciate and it's kind of interesting you bring up that we've been working together for 2 years now, and we've only just this year, back in May, started making the content available to people.
Yes,
First
lots of
with the
long
book.
behind the scenes work.
Yep. And I was thinking about this because a coworker was described when he heard Morticia was already putting out Halloween decorations in September. He was like, "Oh no, you don't put out anything. You don't decorate for the holiday until the first day of the month." And to talk about the little stinger that Paul added at the end of the end of tonight's video about Snaggle and Thor Save Christmas.
Yes.
The lead time in producing content really has just given me a new appreciation for those people who put out things early and decorate.
As I watched the end of the video and I heard Paul say, "And coming in December," for a split second, I was like, "Oh my God, what's coming in December?" Because I had we've already done and gone and moved past our Christmas story. So I was way past December in my mental space. But yeah, so for us, Thor and Snaggle have already saved Christmas. But
Yep.
everyone else gonna have to hang on a little longer.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because I was watching The Offer, the CBS series about the Godfather, and it really hit home a few times because there was the scene where they were premiering the movie, and you had Francis Ford Coppola. He just he was outside the doors. He couldn't be in the theater watching it with the audience, and that's the thing that um, kind of is. I understand it now because as the stories are premiering, I'm wondering, are people going to react to it? Are they going to enjoy it? The first time Pea Ridge Part One premiered, and I got the reaction, that we got, it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And so now every time a story premieres, I'm excited and nervous all at one time because I'm just afraid that people are going to hate it.
Well, I would like to think, in all of my editing prowess, that if I really thought people were going to hate one of your stories, I would have let you know way back when. But you write good stories, and I work to help put out the highest quality of content. And then, with these stories, we've got Paul's voice, which still just it's a little unsettling, no matter how many times you hear it, to add that little extra pizzazz, a little extra flair to these stories.
And talking about editing, tonight, listening after that scene where, and spoilers for anybody, the one person who's watching. Hopefully, you've listened to Pea Ridge
Oh,
3.
yeah, can you see how many people are watching? I can't see that.
Yeah, I see live views. I see 3. So
Cool. Okay. Didn't know if I was just if you and I were just having a chat,
yeah,
but
we kind of are.
we kind of are.
But it's one of those things where the whole when I first wrote it, it just kind of ended with that one perfect line with Snaggle going, they were good boys, but they had failed. That was kind of the end of it. But you made me wring more emotion out of it by really digging into what Rich was feeling.
Oh, yeah. I made it worse for everyone. So you're welcome. Because I was like, no, no, no. We need to see Rich mourn over these dogs. He's just gotten this glimpse of family and someone who cares about him. He's alone in a hospital when they come, and then he watches them, in his mind, in vain, sacrifice themselves to this creature. And I was like, no, no. We need to feel more of that, even though, I mean, that line itself, they were good boys, but they had failed. They were good dogs. I was crying then. The editorial process for this story had a lot more tears than they teach you in college, but hung in there.
Yep. Yeah, Morticia was looking at me weird whenever I was reading your comments come in because it was just kind of it was kind of edifying because it was, wow, the scene had its desired effect.
Oh, yeah, it's I'm sure for you and I, it seems so closed off. For so long, we're the only two who know the story. We're the only two who get to know what happens along in the development process in general. So then when other people can finally experience it and they have like opinions on it, wow, it's very odd. Even like I said, I watched the premiere of the final installment this evening with my mother, and even listening to her, and of course, she's looking at me like I can personally change what's happening as Paul reads the story, and I'm like, that's not quite how this works. But I appreciate, excuse me, I appreciate the emotional investment, and I think I talked in comments to you when I read the one of the initial drafts, and I cried about Snaggle and Thor, that it wasn't just me. That when other people who haven't been here for the entire journey can watch that, like my mother, and look at me like I've murdered puppies, which, pretty close. It's interesting to see someone else feel it with as much emotion as I did, and that's exciting, and I think it's a testament to your writing.
Thank you. Well, looking at the comments, it was kind of weird tonight because, like I said, that anxiety about are people going to enjoy it or not, and I usually watch in the other room on the TV with my wife, and I've got my phone up and I'm checking comments, and usually there's somebody racing to be the first. But tonight it was like 10, 15 minutes in the story, and I'm like, there's no comments. It's just Kayla's in my comments. So
I'm sure that sense of anxiety was heightened in the fact that it was the final installment. Like, this is how it all wraps up, which people tend to have more opinions about. So I'm interested to see more comments come in as well.
yeah.
But maybe, I don't know, maybe some people haven't caught up on the first two segments and they need to watch them all. Because I think I mentioned that too, or I talked about this in my Instagram story. I was like, probably spoilers in the live stream if you haven't watched all three installments.
Right. And it's, as I'm sitting there listening to it, as you know, there's talk of, or plans at this point of making it into a novel, and that's my November NaNoWriMo goal is to novelize this. On one hand, I'm wondering if the audience is sitting there going, well, here's Sergeant Halfley, and he's talking about all these events we haven't seen. What the hell, and hopefully my goal in writing that in was kind of, okay, there's things going on, there's some revelations here, but how does this play out? Who are these other people? And so hopefully people will enjoy finding out where Captain Boleyn comes from, where Sergeant Halfley comes in. I have some hopefully pretty cool, pretty interesting ideas to make this part of a bigger universe with some of the things that we've been working on and we've talked about, and that I haven't discussed with anybody. So
mysterious, as is the nature. But no, yeah, I think we've established an interesting group of characters, especially branching out from just the first installment of Pea Ridge, where we kind of only see Glenn briefly, but then we just have Rich, and we've got Snaggle, and then we expand into different perspectives through the next two installments. So by the end, we've got a strong cast of characters that are rich enough, no pun intended, to be developed further in the novel. They're interesting enough that I think readers will want to know what's going on with them. What else didn't we see? Because in the nature of Pea Ridge, in a story like that where there's multiple points of view, multiple voices that we hear from, you don't get to see every part of the story as it's happening concurrently. So I think in a novel, there's a lot more room to get the pieces that this serialized version of Pea Ridge might not have gotten to include.
Right. Let's see. So far, looking at the comments, got MC who's been waiting to see hear how this one ends. That was 30 minutes ago. So he's probably getting to the point where he starts hating me, and where I apologize,
Oh yeah. There was
Nora's pretty psyched about seeing another Pea Ridge installment. So again, hopefully hopefully it's a satisfying end for her.
Absolutely. And I think that, again, the fact that from the earlier installments, there was as much interest in the comments for what was happening, as much engagement with the story. I think people will be pleased to have a conclusion to this, but also perhaps appreciate more the ending and how, like you said, there's room for a novel. There's enough things going on.
So hey, I've got my first ever comment in a live stream.
Heck yeah.
So Killian, hopefully I'm not butchering it too much. So multiple perspectives throughout influence the writing and editing process. Well, from the writing process, that's one thing that when I started out, I really, really struggled with because I was really bad with head popping and changing up the point of view with whoever was speaking and showing what was going on inside their heads. I had a really great mentor who he kind of taught me how to do very focused point of view. And so from that, it was okay. How is and I'll use Captain Boleyn perspective. His view, he was an unreliable narrator, and so his view was, I don't like Tech Sergeant Halfley. I have a very poor opinion of him, and so everything that he does, I'm filtering through that, and everything he perceived was wrong. And then it was kind of nice to get that moment where now I switched to Sergeant Halfley's perspective, and I get to kind of reveal that about Captain Boleyn's character. So it's one of those things that for me, multiple perspectives, I really like them because you can play around with different concepts like unreliable narrators. But also, before I turn it over to Kayla for the editing process, I'm really glad that you love the episode and the entire series. Snaggle and Thor Save Christmas, that was written as kind of my let's have some fun and let me, it's Christmas, so let me write a fun story for the audience, for the fans who've borne with me through this really dark tale where I one of my coworkers constantly reminds me that I'm a monster. So Kayla.
Oh, don't worry. I think you talked about I've had my moments there too, where I'm crying in my Google Docs about the dogs. But when it comes to having multiple perspectives, I think from an editing point of view, I think the biggest part about it is, as an editor, I understand that in your mind, you know what every character is thinking and could be thinking and could possibly be doing, but it's about not the reader doesn't need to know all of that at the same time. I think we talk about some things like that in when there are pieces of work with world building in them. You often with world building, I recommend to authors that you take a separate document and you write out all of this stuff about how the world works, but realize that the reader doesn't need to know it all at once. It doesn't need to all happen right away. And I think it kind of applies a similar philosophy with multiple perspectives, where it's whose perspective is most interesting to the reader for this point in the story. And in the nitty gritty editorially, that's a lot of paying attention to tenses. For example, in Pea Ridge, Rich's point of view is the only one that's ever told from first person. And certain things like how you refer to other characters in a POV, like Snaggle's POV, he refers to his humans or his alphas, but obviously when you're in Glenn's POV, he's not going to refer to himself like that or refer to Rich like that. So it's just those subtle nuances to look out for with the perspectives. And I know I see another comment, but I have one other thing to say on perspective, which is what you mentioned, which is that you mentioned the decision to have Tech Sergeant Halfley have a brief section from his point of view to reveal that Boleyn was an unreliable narrator. And at first, I remember being tentative about that section because I didn't want it to feel random. I didn't want it to feel random that this one character had this one brief section from their point of view as they were dying. Again, sorry for the spoilers if you all are here, unbeknownst to how the story goes. But I think that the emotion packed into his point of view what made it necessary, because you're right, there had to be some way to seamlessly reveal that Boleyn didn't really know what was up. And I think it was a very emotional scene as the listener, as the reader, when Halfley's watching his leading or person in superior authority. I'm still struggling with the military terminology, but we get along okay. He's watching Boleyn leave, and he's dying, and he's realizing that this is probably what happened to the rest of his team. They also got abandoned like this. So I think that's very emotional. So getting to see the bit of vindication, the bit of retribution that Halfley can take on Boleyn in his final moments was emotional enough that I was like, you know what? Yes, let's give him his own point of view, even if it's for the equivalent of 60 seconds in the timeline of the story. It made it worth it. And I think that's something that the audience wanted to hear at that point.
So my second comment, I know this character. It's Dev Betts, or as I call him, Dare Bear. He's my primary my primary beta reader. So he reads stuff typically before Morticia does. And so he's got to give him a shout out because he's a he's a big, no, you're number one, baby. He's a big part of why I'm here today, because when I started writing A Mother's Torment, I was sending him chapter by chapter, and he was encouraging me to go along, and getting over finishing a novel that first time, it's a huge accomplishment, and it's like running a marathon. And he was over there holding up the sign saying, "You got this, you can do this." There were a few times though that it was like, yeah, I think you're wrong, and I think you're doing something wrong here. And I think that's something that opened me up to editing, honestly, because I got used to him calling balls and strikes on me. But anyway, his question about evolving as a writer and how I bounce over writing, it's for those that you become affectionate of versus those you aren't fond of. Something that's kind of funny is sometimes whenever I get into the head of my antagonist and figure out what it is that's motivating them, they may have started out from a position where I'm not that fond of them, but eventually they become fun to write, and I do become fond of them. I do care about them as living, breathing characters. And so when I overwrite, and the opposite, sometimes I underwrite a character, it's one of those things where that's where beta readers like Dare Bear come in, and where you come in, Kayla, is you are the people that's pushing me to do better than I am, and wring more life out of the story. So
I like that. Wring more life out of the story. A bit aggressive, but that's kind of exactly what it is.
Oh, well, sometimes, that's how it feels with the writing and creative endeavors.
I think What would you say? Who's your favorite character to write for in the Pea Ridge saga?
Come back one more time, Kayla. Sorry, something distracted me.
Oh my goodness, no worries. Who I just wondered based on that question, who was your favorite or the character you're most affectionate over in the Pea Ridge saga?
So Pea Ridge is probably the one story where what I just said isn't true. At the end of the day, I didn't really care for Captain Boleyn, and um, you know, having him survive was kind of the best revenge you could have. I think my my fondest character in this story was Snaggle. Um,
Naturally. I mean, if you didn't say Snaggle, I feel like we might have had a problem because Snaggle was clearly the MVP of this story. But I think I think really in the final segment where Rich and Glenn are reflecting on how they've seen Bolin in the news and the survivor's guilt that they can see in him, I think that was something that was probably difficult to do as about a character that has no redeeming qualities, pretty much.
yep.
Um, and I remember in the editing process, I was like, we have to make sure that Rich understands what Bolin did to Glenn and Sarah and what happened before Rich and Glenn got reunited, which most everything happened before they got reunited. So, but I think that having that moment where they discuss the survivor's guilt and Glenn can still get in his two piece about the fact that that guy was an ass, and Rich can be from an outside perspective, like some of our readers, though I'm hopefully some of you also hated Bolin. Anyway, Rich from the outside perspective can see Bolin with a more sympathetic eye, and I think writing that again is probably impressive. There's a reason I edit and don't write because I don't know if I could write anything nice about that guy. But I think it's a demonstration of what you said, an antagonistic character. You still end up having to write them well enough that you care about them because that's the whole point. You still want your readers and listeners to care about the antagonist because if they don't, then they're not being a very good antagonist.
Yeah, and one of the things with antagonists is even if you despise them, they do serve purposes in the story other than necessarily to be, the antagonist. Like Boleyn scenes Thor and Snaggle off on the side of the house. It really it was like, okay, this is the perfect way that I separate the dogs from their humans because I got to do that to move the story, and not just move the story, but to give Snaggle and Thor their own agency and their own story arc rather than tagging along.
And
Um,
I think the way that you did it was a very believable way because it wouldn't have been believable for Glenn and Sarah to willingly leave the dogs there. That's not what
yeah,
happened. That would have been listening to Bolin, who was like, they're not here, just leave them. And they were like, no. I think having that moment where it's like they have to reassure themselves, even though they're upset, that like the dogs know how to hide for cover and we have to get out of here. That was a realistic way to split them up because otherwise it could have been too choppy. It could have been just like, oh, they're splitting them up for no reason. But it's seamless when you add that into the story because it's true to Bolin's character, where he's going to try to convince them that what he wants to do is the right thing to do, and true enough to their characters that they have a logical justification for what's happening, and they're not just being easily swayed by the asshole in the truck.
Now, I will, going back to the original question about the antagonist in the Pea Ridge universe or person, we haven't met him yet. And, well, you and I have.
Oh,
But
goodness.
I did kind of grow really, really fond of the antagonist from Snaggle and Thor Save Christmas.
Ah, I see. And in that case, my advice was to write more about the antagonist. So I'm sure it was interesting to hear that piece of critique.
And it became odd because in a weird way for me, the antagonist kind of morphed into the protagonist, and I felt a lot of sympathy for him, but that's kind of getting into spoiler territory. And
I know we'll have to let Christmas catch up with us again.
yep. uh so I did, looking at the comments, um did get a negative comment,
Let me pull it
but
up.
it's kind of an interesting take, because somebody did not like the dogs, what I did to the dogs.
Oh wow, I just
and,
saw it. Did,
and it
did they
is
finish? Did they finish watching the
he
installment?
did. I asked him because I wanted to know, and I there's websites out there that you go to find out if the dog dies in the movie, because there's a lot of people who
Oh my god,
don't
yeah.
do it, and it is tough because, um like Guy says, he's lost some dogs in tragic ways, and as have I, and so it's really really difficult to do that. I mean, it was difficult to write that scene for me, and whenever I wrote that line about they were good boys but they had failed, it gave me chills. And even here listening to it gave me chills and gave me a very strong emotional reaction. But on the same token, it's something where, I wanted to make the Snaggle and Thor into heroes doing heroic things. Um, it's just, I took them to that point of near death, and brought them back. So
Is now a good time to show off my shirt?
yeah.
It's kind of topical. All right, let's see if I can do this without making too much noise. Is it going to be backwards? Oh no, it's perfect. Look at that. Yes. That's sometimes, especially with as long as Xavier and I've been working together, the rapport in the comments, the editorial comments, becomes a little less what my professors would have approved of in college, and becomes more conversational, because that's just the editorial relationship that we've developed. So, if you kill Snaggle, I riot was one of the lovely comments that I chose to leave him going over one of the drafts of the final installment of Pea Ridge. So, am I proud to have one of my angry editorial comments on a t-shirt? Absolutely. Best gift ever. So I was, for all of those members of the audience, like Guy and my mother, who was also furious, I was there with you. I felt it. And I cried more than once. I had already read the story and edited it, and then editing it again. I know what happened, and I still cried reading about the deaths of Snaggle and Thor. So, and again, I just kept telling Xavier that that was a testament to your writing, because I knew what was going to happen. I had tweaked what was going to happen with commas and whatnot. I already knew it, and it still made me cry. And I think I was too busy waiting for my mother to slap me upside the head for taking part in killing these dogs to cry this evening. But it was definitely there was definitely almost as much anger there as Guy exhibited in that comment. She was like, if she's like, I would have had to leave a negative review. I would have had to say, why would you do that? So thankfully, the tiny gray aliens bring Snaggle and Thor back, and they're just happy to be there. And they just go cuddle up with Rich, and then they get to see Glenn and Sarah, and they get to sit on the porch in the sun, and well, their owners drink alcohol, and they just get pets. What more can they ask for?
And if it makes you feel better, Guy feel better, and your mom feel better, one of my coworkers, Chuck, who was the bourbon police officer from part 2, he he frequently reminds me that I'm a monster. And he'll often, when we're working, whenever it's quiet and he's, just as background stuff, he'll listen to it. So I'm very afraid of seeing this man tomorrow because I think he might just beat my ass because he'll pause it where Guy paused it, walk to my cubicle, and just fist of fury. So
the deputy sheriff can't save you there.
But yeah, so if I've got black eye tomorrow, it's well deserved.
There's a story. I know. I wish I could remember exactly the saga of comments that were taking place as I slowly realized what was about to happen when I was editing the final installment for the first time.
Oh, I think I've got them memorized.
Oh God.
Because it was first of all, for your professors, the one thing that I would remind is we're writing fiction. We're not writing something nonfiction where we have to maintain objectivity and be dispassionate. I need to know as an author that my words, my scene is having the emotional impact that scene deserves, that character deserves, because Snaggle is based off of a real dog with 3 legs, and he's a great dog, and so he deserves a deep story arc where he gets to show stuff off. So I need to form that connection with the reader, that reader needs to be emotionally invested. And so when I commented, I'm sorry, and you're like, for what, Xavier? For what? And then you're like, if you kill Snaggle, I riot. I'm just, especially knowing what comes next. And then
just my live reactions popping up.
Yep. Fuck you.
Oh, just, I did.
That one, all caps. Fuck you. It had me nervous laughing because it's like, on one hand, I felt bad because I knew I was taking you on an emotional roller coaster, but I felt so much relief that it was doing it. And then whenever you went through with the final edits, and I think my favorite one, because it told me that the scene worked, was when you told me that you knew what was coming and you were still crying.
Yeah.
It was weird because it's like, there are times where you want to make people cry, and when they do, it's like, okay, I did my job. So
yeah, and as funny as it is to think about the fact that I knew exactly what was going to happen, and it still got to me that way, I'll repeat again that it's a testament to your writing that I felt just as much dread the second time around, even knowing what was going to happen. And I was trying to think today about what makes Snaggle so sympathetic. And at first I was like, oh, he's a small dog and he has 3 legs. Like, how can you not just think he's adorable? But no, it couldn't just be that. It has to be the way that you've written him, that we just like, look at this little guy, and he's making his way through the world on 3 legs, and he has this heroic moment where he does what he can do, where he just bites into this creature to defend his human, and it was so emotional. And you're right, I don't think, perhaps with any of the work we'd done previously, I don't think I had ever read anything else where you probably wanted me to cry, like you wanted such an emotional reaction. So you did it very well. Not that I want to be known for encouraging heartbreaking dog murders to take place in more of your work, but you can clearly write an emotional scene very well. So the fact that even Guy and my mother and anyone else who might comment were so angry, again, your words were able to bring out such a strong emotion in these people. And me, who wrote fuck you in all caps, which I'm sure is a middle finger to anyone who taught me how to handle editor author relationships in college. But listen, listen, we're doing okay. If you had been on the journey, but and I think that makes our author editor relationship even better since it's been going on for so long and we just have like a comfortable rapport. I'm glad that I could be emotionally angry and also still do my job and everything was okay.
Yeah, and it's, I think there is a fundamental difference between the relationship a fiction and nonfiction. Is writing is a very intimate act. Talking about bets here. It took a lot of trust and building up the courage to talk to him about my ideas, to then share my writing with him, because imposter syndrome is real. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what's this kid from rural Missouri thinking writing a novel? And when you start working with somebody for as long as we have, and we've had a few conversations about, okay, what's the subtext here? What's going on? What inspired this? And, I've shared some very deep, painful moments in my life with you. And so I think that kind of, if you don't have some sort of emotional relationship with your editor, you might be doing it wrong when you're writing fiction.
I think I think I can attest that yes, sometimes when you shared subtext and reasons for certain character motivations that I didn't understand, it definitely helped me do my job better because sometimes I needed to understand that this isn't a reaction that's coming out of left field. This is a reaction of someone in real life that you've witnessed or experienced yourself. So, no, it's not out of place. And then it's much easier for me to ask the questions I need to ask to make sure that we can get that across to the reader successfully. And I think I think it would be quite boring working together if we weren't allowed to be a little more playful with it. Um, and I think yes, perhaps if we worked on something nonfiction together, that would change. But I certainly really appreciate. I think anyone can appreciate a job that you can go to and still be yourself. You're not always putting on this professional persona. And I certainly really enjoy that. And sometimes when you're reading about adorable tripod dogs. It's much easier to be able to be to be more colloquial in my comments than perhaps with something nonfiction. I think it's also just a testament to how I get engrossed in your writing because there's a very I won't go into the I could go into a long tangent on the difference between reading to edit and like reading for enjoyment. And I definitely think that I've found a happy medium where clearly I am invested in the characters. Snaggle evoked many tears, but also I could do my job and I could make sure that, that the writing went out and was polished the best it could be so that the most people could understand what you were trying to say. And the fact that those two things weren't mutually exclusive is I think a big part of why we work so well together.
Yep. Agreed. Uh, let's see if there's any more new comments. It did look like Guy went ahead and finished the story and
Good.
saw. Um, hopefully he liked it. So uh,
I see one that says Snaggle and Thor Save Christmas better be a real thing. It is a real thing. We assure you. We would not joke about those dogs again.
Uh, so let's maybe talk about, because it's closing in, probably got about 10 more minutes. And I really appreciate everybody who's watching this. I can't believe that I can start talking about having fans. But no, so some of the things coming down the pipe. So I've got a vampire story coming out that I'm really, really excited for. So keep watching. It's going to come out of Cycle later this month. And there's voice actresses. So it's called The Last Bride, and it focuses in on Dracula's three brides that you saw in the novel, but didn't really see them do much. So the thing there, the inspiration was, what kind of woman would marry Dracula is the core question. You know, what would be the circumstances? So really, really looking forward to that production. November, the story I submitted, it's a little bit different of a style, so I'm curious to see if Paul can make it work. So, you know, if he can, it's going to be about werewolves in World War One. And then, yes, Jason, because I'm assuming that's behind the man behind the mask. Snaggle and Thor Save Christmas is a real thing. It's edited. The final copy's been delivered to Paul. So keep watching.
Yes, they make a delightful reappearance in time for the holidays to just soothe your soul if you're still a little emotionally drained from from Pea Ridge Part 3.
Trail mix is really M&Ms and squirrel food.
Yeah, you know what? It's the M&Ms that are the best part. I stand by that.
Yep.
It was an interesting, seemed somewhat random comment, but I mean, I can't disagree.
Yep.
So.
I love Paul's little dad jokes that he sneaks in at the beginning. The thing that's interesting, little bit of trivia here. This was the first story that I don't think I worked in the word titillate.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even realize.
It was one of those things where I kind of felt like, okay, this is the conclusion. We need to stick it. And so
we'll save it for another day.
And there's talk that Paul's going to release this, all 3 episodes strung together. So, so it'll be in there twice then. So.
Just enough times that you might not be like, why does that word keep popping up?
But I do kind of one thing I appreciated with part 2 and part 3 was how he just kind of was like, okay, kind of here's where we left off. Let's get after it.
Yes, let's get after it. I think someone commented that too.
Yep.
A nice spurring on phrase.
Boy, yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm really looking forward to the comments tonight, and hopefully hopefully everybody really enjoys it.
So. Yes, I know. I love hearing people's thoughts. I think I talked about this at the beginning, but again, it feels so closed in when it's just you and I who know about these things. And then when other people come in with outside opinions, It's like, oh, I didn't know they could do that. It's so odd to all of a sudden realize that, oh, a bunch of other people know this thing that we've had to keep to ourselves forever.
Yep. Ooh, I just learned. I hit this little button and I can pop up the comments on the screen.
Oh my goodness, we're learning. Let's give us an A. Give us an A for live streaming part 1.
Emerson didn't teach us about live streaming.
Oh goodness, no. We got okay with Zoom though. Okay.
Yep. So, well, Kayla, I think probably it's about that time. I really appreciate you showing up for my first ever live stream, being my guest.
Right, mine too.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I was nervous, so I probably said a bunch of times, which I'm sure someone will point out to me. But this was fun. I mean, yeah, it's like one of our meetings, but with some more of an outside influence, other people to consult. Very exciting.
Yep. So, and maybe we'll do it again soon. And I am looking to at some point hopefully grow my YouTube channel. So,
Nice.
just to start developing that brand. So, but I think probably about time to head off, and hopefully your mom's forgiven you.
Right? Giving her a little time to cool down. I think it'll be okay.
Yeah. I showed our text chat to Morticia, and I was like, I love her mom's comments.
Yeah.
So say hello to me or to her for me.
I will.
So, okay. Well, have a good night.
You too. And thank you to everyone who watched.
Yep. And have a good night, Heartlanders.
Woo!